Yes! Welcome into SportsBIT. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy Tuesday, February 21st. Big game breakdown, the doubleheader on ESPN, South Carolina, Florida, Indiana, and Iowa. Nigel Seeley in the deep dive, Premier League, Champions League. Some picks, who to bet on, who to fade, and the play of the day. We look to make it 5 in a row. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books in a second. This broke right after we taped the Sunday night. Cousins to the Pelicans after the All-Star game. One of the worst organizations in all of sports. This guy's a top 12, top 15 player in the league, averaging 28 and 11. They didn't get much for him, and it gets worse for the Kings. They can swap picks. The 76ers can swap picks with the Kings this year and have their 2019 pick. They have turned Cousins, Whiteside, Isaiah Thomas, and Tyreke Evans into nothing, Teddy.
Well, they got Tyreke Evans back. But of course, the guy that supposedly Sacramento was targeting in this trade, Buddy Hield. The quote from Vlade Divac, he's a talented guy. His work ethic is exactly what we want here. They're saying behind the scenes, they're comparing Hield to Steph Curry. There's only one problem. When you look at Hield's stats this season, and again, he's just a rookie, you don't want to make too much of it, but true shooting percentage, you look at the advanced metric numbers, he's at .502. The league average is .552. So he's way down. Defensively, how about this? He's a bottom 10 player defensively based on the advanced metric stats. Overall, minus 4.5 RPM. That's bottom 10 among all players. And remember, we're not talking about a kid who came out a one and done. We're talking about a guy who played through his senior season. So when you're talking about upside, it's not necessarily there the way it might be for a guy who only played 1 year in college and is now struggling in his rookie season. So more power to you, Sacramento. But I'm with you, Pauly, and there's no way to justify the deal. It's a bad organization, and the Kings will continue to stink. And of course, now dumping off veterans as well. Matt Barnes getting cut. Sacramento may well end up being the worst team in the West, right? Over the back half of the campaign, this team's got nothing.
Oh yeah, they're going to tank now, and they're probably going to get rid of more guys, and it's the second worst roster in all the NBA. As far as the Curry stuff is laughable. Cousins has more threes than Buddy does, so that's ridiculous. How about what Vlade said yesterday? We had a better offer on the table 2 days ago. Why would you say that?
I have no idea. I really don't. And of course, with the trading deadline Thursday, it's not like they had to pull the trigger on this deal right here, right now. But the irony of, let's not forget, all right, Sacramento has a glut at this position. You know what I mean? It's a two guard. It's a two spot. This is a Kings team. They've made a selection in the top 10 of the NBA draft every year since 2010. Only 2 of those players would remain, one of whom, supposedly the building block, in Ben McLemore, who plays the same position as Buddy Hield. I guess McLemore wasn't such a good pick. And Willie Cauley-Stein, you think he's going to step in and fill DeMarcus' shoes right now?
Nope, he stinks too.
Exactly.
You remember Stauskas? They gave him away to clear some room, and that was a great move by the Sixers. Apparently Cousins was rough on him too, and they ruined Stauskas and had to get rid of him. How about the Lakers? They wouldn't give up Ingram. That's a game changer. If they could have grabbed Cousins, they wouldn't give up a guy who's yet to score 20 points in a game and is shooting 30%. That's absurd.
Well, it speaks. You talk about Boogie Cousins. There are teams that are going to want him. There are teams that are not going to want him. His reputation around the league is not good. Remember, he's essentially gotten at least 5 head coaches fired. This is now the 7th head coach he'll be playing for in Alvin Gentry. His next technical he gets is a full game suspension. Every second technical after that also will cost him a game. And we're talking about a guy who has multiple off-court issues that have clouded, and on-court issues that have clouded his career. I'm with you on Cousins' talent, but I can understand why a team that's building like the Lakers wouldn't trade away a guy they think may well be a building block in order to get a veteran like Cousins. He's a win-now guy. He's not a build-for-the-future guy. If I'm LA, I wouldn't make that deal either.
Yeah, I think that's absurd. And in any event, I think the Lakers are being ridiculous there. How about the Pelicans? I like that they're trying to do the opposite of what everyone's doing in the NBA. They're going to do it with the front court, and they got Davis and Boogie Cousins here, and see if they can make that run and get in the playoffs and get the 7 or the 8 seed.
Well, yeah, all of a sudden Golden State's like, hey, we might have a series in the first round against in New Orleans, because if you remember, where the Warriors are weakest is in the front court, and New Orleans is primed to dominate everybody in the paint right now. This is going to allow Anthony Davis to play further from the basket. I would imagine his rebounding numbers will decline. I would imagine his shot block numbers will decline. But boy, as a team, it makes New Orleans a little bit scarier than they've been. And with Jrue Holiday at the point, they've got a big three now that can give teams some trouble. But at the same time, a lot of pressure on Alvin Gentry, where there wasn't before. New Orleans has to make the 8 seed now. Otherwise, this was a disaster of a deal for them, just like it was for we think it is for Sacramento.
All right, bad for the books. We always say, a friend always says, respect the lines maker. I think they made a big-time mistake here with this game. I didn't understand it. This opened 10 and 119, and it was nothing but Miami money, 54-48 in overtime. Game goes to overtime, and he never sniffed the over.
Yeah, I mean, the odds makers continue to overrate Virginia, and the bettors certainly didn't mind taking big points in a game that wasn't going to have any tempo. Here's a tweet from ESPN Stats and Info talking about the Virginia struggles offensively. They scored 144 points over the last few games. That's the fewest over a 3-game span in a season since, December 1951. If you're a Virginia basketball fan, you do not want comparisons to a team from 1951. And how about Jim Larinaga pulling off the 3-0 while Jaquan Newton was suspended? Man, that guy can coach. He can coach circles around just about anybody.
No, yeah, 4 losses in a row for Virginia. Not playing good ball. They got to play Carolina again coming up next Monday. Our play of the day, a winner, never in doubt, right, Teddy? Texas plus 16, bet down to 15. Actually, there was a 14.5 at Bookmaker. Again, it falls 15.
Yeah, good. That's good news for us. The play of the day cashes. Bad news for the books. Bettors either won or pushed. Most bettors, at least. Some books closed 15.5. As you mentioned, Bookmaker at 14.5. We're dancing around the number all night. And, of course, the last bucket, West Virginia scored with, 2:22 left on the clock. And then what do we have? Missed jumper, turnover, missed layup, missed three-pointer, turnover, missed three-pointer. After the rebound, end of game. It was a sweat, whichever side you had down the stretch, with both teams clunking their garbage time opportunities.
All right, Texas Tech needed this game to get on the bubble and try to get in the tournament. Didn't happen, and they bet them up to 3.5 at home. They lost in overtime, and Iowa State should have won that game in regulation, Teddy, but they get it done in OT.
Yeah, the Cyclones tried to give it away at the end of regulation, allowed Texas Tech to send it to overtime. But the market forces, again, note what's happening here. We've seen it consistently this week. We saw it last week, and we're going to see it over the course of the next couple of weeks. The markets are pricing the must-win teams as if that means something. Texas Tech must win at home. Betting them up, minus 1.5 to 3.5. The reason that they must win is because they're mediocre. They're not elite. And when you start laying prices with mediocre teams and the markets start saying, must win, in my mind, those are some of the easier bets you can find in college basketball, betting against some of these market overreactions. Bad bet last night on the Red Raiders.
Yeah, very good. I agree with all that. Just must win doesn't mean they're going to win just because they have to. Up next, big game breakdown, the doubleheader on ESPN, and then soccer with Nigel in the deep dive on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBIT, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. ESPN, first game of doubleheader, South Carolina and the Gators, Florida 9.5, 138.5 the total. 2 big questions for this one. How good are the Gators, and how do you break down the first meeting between these two teams? South Carolina was laying 2 January 18th. They won 57-53. Florida was 0 of 17 from 3 and missed 13 free throws, Teddy.
Yeah, look, the number 3 defense, South Carolina, met the number 4 defense, Florida. And what we see? The game was scoreless until 14-14 when Kenny Hill finally had a steal and a layup. There were 16 steals, 11 block shots in the ballgame. As you mentioned, the Gators couldn't hit a bucket from three-point line. That's the only time Florida had not made a three-point shot since 1992. That's before anybody on the roster was born, a long time before they were born. Mike White, the quote, "They were terrific defensively, and they didn't allow for any open shots. And the few open shots we got, we didn't convert. 0 for 17 from 3, I'm not sure I've been a part of something like that. Of course, now Florida has a chance to get them on their home floor, a place where they've been pretty good shooting three-pointers all season long.
8-6, he's done. They had a lull in mid-January, beat Georgia in overtime, lost to South Carolina, home against Vandy. Now 8-0 straight up and 6-0 ATS since then, though.
Yeah, 6-2 against the number. And when you look at their other losses, yeah, they had the loss to South Carolina. They had the loss to Vandy. But the other losses, you had Gonzaga. No shame there. Duke, no shame there. Florida State, no shame there. All of those away from home on neutral floor. And this is even without this center, this is a legitimate defense. I mean, it really is. They have great depth. No player on the roster averages more than 28 minutes. They have good balance. My concern about the Gators is who's the guy that's going to step up? Who's that Final Four player when they need him? I mean, Kenyon Barry leads the team, 13 points a game. Kevon Allen, 13 points a game. These guys aren't Lonzo Ball or Nigel Williams-Goss or Frank Mason or Josh Hart or those type of players. And, of course, with Egbunu, the center, who tore his ACL, gone for the season, you wonder about the interior of the defense. Now, Kavaris Hayes stepped in, 4 block shots and 10 rebounds in 25 minutes after moving to the starting lineup. He filled his shoes for a couple of games. We'll see if he can do it long term. Obviously, when every time you lose your starting center at this stage of the campaign, it's never a good thing.
South Carolina, great on defense, ugly on offense, very ugly. 300 in the nation in effective field goal percentage. At least they have Thornwell, 21 points per game at 20 in the first meeting, 30 a game, averaging that in his last 4. He's the end game closer, if you will, that Florida lacks, Teddy.
Yeah, and I mean, Thornwell's a special player. He really is. And he's someone who's a lot of fun to watch. And he's someone who can score a basket when guarded at the end of a contest. But when you watch the Gamecocks offensively, even compared to a team like Florida, it's ugly. There are extended stretches where bad shots, bad possessions, and that's why South Carolina, even with those impressive defensive numbers, still has taken a good handful of losses and is not looking at a top seed in the upcoming NCAA tournament.
The spread's too high. I don't get it.
I mean, it's your revenge factor for Florida playing at home, and it's a South Carolina team that at times struggles to put the biscuit in the basket, especially against a defense like that of the Gators.
Up next, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. The second game of the doubleheader on ESPN, Indiana and Iowa. Iowa at home 2, 156.5 the total. Desperation time. Indiana 15-12, Iowa 14-13. Loser runs the risk of not even making the NIT. Indiana's dropped 4 in a row. Iowa 3 straight. They didn't recover from the double OT loss at Minnesota. Iowa expected this. Peter Jock having a big season, 20 points per game. The only upperclassman in the rotation. The next 4 leading scorers, all freshmen. Maybe they've hit the wall. Jock on what McCaffrey told the team after Saturday's home loss to Illinois. Quote, he said, "We were playing not to lose. We overthought stuff and overdid stuff. Playing too fast. Not playing at our own pace down the stretch. I thought we tried to play too fast as a group and not slow the ball down with our offense, including me," end quote. Only the second home loss of the season in Big Ten play. The other one to Maryland. They beat Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, even Iowa State on this floor, Teddy. I don't know. This is a tough game where both teams head in the wrong direction.
Well, yeah. I mean, but of the two teams, I kind of trust Iowa to bounce back a little bit more. That being said, from a situational standpoint, I'm expecting Indiana money. This is why, okay? Iowa, a very young team. And they got a bunch of players that'll be coming back next year. There's plenty of patience for Fran McCaffrey, all right? Tom Crean has kind of coached himself into a corner right now. Indiana had 6 days off since that 1-point loss at Minnesota, 75-74. And this is a team, as you mentioned, now 4 straight losses. They've gone from being a lock in the tournament to now not even being on the bubble anymore. And injuries have certainly been a big factor in that. But, James Blackman, who's been hurt, he's come back, only scored 13 points a game in his 3 games since returning. 12 of 38 from the field. That's some ugly shooting, 6 assists, 4 turnovers. Perhaps this extended break might get him back into the offensive flow.
Yeah, Crean could be gone after this year. You would expect maybe big changes after the long practice week. How about this? Josh Newkirk, not the case. Quote, just getting the little details down, knowing where to be on offense, knowing where to guard different things on defense, those were the main focuses, end quote. After 27 games, that's what you're working on?
Yeah. Hey, you wonder why Tom Green's job is in jeopardy? The fact that you see a quote like that coming from a veteran leader like Josh Newkirk, it's a concern. It's obviously a concern. And with Indiana's collapse right here, they're not a team I trust to win in a hostile environment. Not one iota. For me, this game's very clear. Iowa or pass. That home court has been strong all year. And of course, the fact they lost to Illinois on this floor last time out. Illini have now won a couple of games on the road. They won at Northwestern last week as well, a team growing up. I don't say all bad Iowa. Yeah, they rushed their offense down the stretch, but you know what? Right now, I do think the Hawkeyes are the better of these two teams.
How about some soccer up next? SBR contributor Nigel Seeley. Will Leicester City get relegated? We'll talk Premier League, Chelsea, and the Champions League with some picks and the play of the day. We look to make it 5 in a row. Up next on SportsBIT, betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBIT, betting insight today, 5 great minutes with Nigel Seeley. We're talking soccer, baby. Follow him on Twitter at Seeley_Nigel, SBR contributor. You see the videos all the time on the site and talking to Natalie. Let's start with Leicester City. I mean, this is unbelievable. 5,001, biggest upset in sports history. They win the EPL. They're playing well in the Champions League, but the Premier League, it's a disaster. They're looking at relegation here, and they haven't scored in 6 straight matches. What is the problem, Nigel?
What the problem is these guys think they're big-time Charlies. They won the Premier League last year. They got all the money. They got all the credit. And they suddenly gone to their heads. Happens in lots of sports. You see lots of tennis players win big games and then they suddenly get beat against the minnow the following week. And this was happening in Leicester. You've got to remember last year they were 10,001 for a reason. They were a very bad side. They produced the biggest shock in sporting history. And they were a team that were favourites to be relegated last season. So what they're doing now is what everyone expected them to do. What we didn't expect them to do was what they did last season. The players all got sort of lured. They were linked with big clubs. Jamie Vardy hasn't scored for God knows how long. Riyad Mahrez, the player of the year in the Premier League, is absolutely woeful. The manager now sort of doesn't really know what to do. It's hard to motivate the side. The biggest problem is they can't score, and the biggest problem they can't win away from home. It's all going to come even worse for them, though. I don't think they'll go down. I don't think they'll go down, Paul. I think they'll stay up. I think they will be able to stay up, because they have been in this position before. And when teams are at the bottom of the Premier League, they need to know how to be. They forget they're champions, but they have been involved in relegation scraps before. I think they'll get themselves out, but the debacle is going to continue in the Champions League. They're going to get absolutely annihilated over 2 leagues against Seville. That's an absolute certainty. And it's the biggest come down. It's the biggest fairy tale in sporting history, and it could be the biggest horror story the following 12 months. But this is what Leicester are. This is what the team they were expected to do last season. They were expected to get relegated. They were expected to win it. So they're doing what they're expected to do and struggle. But the fall from grace is alarming, and it's only there's no side in the Premier League at the moment playing worse than Leicester. But I do think they will just about scrape to get out of it.
Okay, that's been the bad. The good, obviously, Chelsea, the 13-match winning streak, big lead in the EPL. Should we continue to bet on Chelsea, or do you think they're going to win the Premier League?
Well, I think they will win the Premier League because of the price and the way they've got the points in the bag. But I don't think it's going to be as clear-cut as many people think. I still think Manchester City will make a big part of this Premier League. Manchester City are going to go all out for wins. But Chelsea have been extremely good. And what they've been very, very good at, Paul, is they've gone to places when they're not expected to win. They've grinded out results like champions do. They've gone and won 1-0. They've gone and won 2-0. Messy, ugly, horrible types of football matches. And that's what you've got to do if you want to be the champions of England or the champions in any sport. You've got to go away from home and you've got to get down nasty. And that's what they've done. Antonio Conte's made an absolute fantastic decision tactically. When they played Arsenal, they got beat 3-0. We reverted to a back three. He's dropped some key players. John Terry, obviously the captain of Chelsea, can't get in the side. He's got no loyalty to any players. He's out there to win. He's a fantastic manager. He's doing a fantastic job. I think they will win it, but I think it's still going to be a few twists and turns. I think they might just have enough points in the bag, but not by the 8 or 9 points they are winning. I think they might just get through by maybe 1 or 2. I think Man City will come with a big charge in the latter part of the season. But Chelsea, I think they've got enough points in the bag and they're winning ugly. And to be champions of England, you've got to win ugly.
Okay, how about some advice the rest of the way? Maybe teams to fade, some clubs to go against, and someone who could maybe be a surprise in terms of relegation.
A couple of teams I don't want to be with at the moment. One of the teams is Bournemouth in the Premier League, completely in disarray. If it wasn't for Leicester, they'd be the worst team in the Premier League on the form. Eddie Howe, good young manager, gets the plaudits, he deserves it. But his style of football is quite expansive, it's quite pleasing on the eye. That is something you don't want to do when you're at the bottom of the team. They're in a terrible run at the moment, haven't won in about 9 games or 8 games. I think they're a side to really, really oppose. Southampton, another side I think might be a team to oppose, because what they've got is they've got a big cup final at the weekend against Manchester United. I think that will take priority on their league form, and I think if they get beat on that, I think you might suffer. So they're the 2 teams I don't want to be with. The team that I think the team that you really want to be with in the Premier League at the moment is Manchester City. I think Manchester City have to win every single game. They have to go all out to win every game. They're on a good run as well, and I think they will win every game. Not every game, I think they'll put a charge on. But Manchester City and at the middle sides, I think Stoke. Stoke always a side that finished the seasons very, very well. Mark Hughes, a good manager. They always want to be better than they did last year. They always want to. I think their highest ever Premier League position was 8th. They always want to be a little bit better. And I think they're a side that they won't allow themselves to slip and slide where other teams have got safety assured and they'll be all right. So Stoke, for me, maybe a good team to follow. Could especially at home, I think they could pull off a few shocks. Man City, the side, I think, will be the team that will be the force in the harsh part of the season. But for bottom sides, Bournemouth and Southampton, 2 teams to avoid.
How about West Ham?
Well, I mentioned West Ham. I think West Ham are very, very poor at home. I think it's taken them a lot of time to get used to their ground. But again, I think they're a good side, good manager. They've made some good signings in the window. They brought in Snodgrass and Fonte from Southampton. Good signings in the Premier League. They have enough about them. I think they need to please their fans. Their fans are never happy hammers. They're always unhappy hammers. So they need to basically please those fans. I think they'll be okay. They've got too many good players. There's too many good players in that side. And they got rid of Dimitri Payet, which I think is a good thing for the team. I think it's a good thing. When you're at the bottom of the table fighting for your life, you need team spirit rather than individual. There's no I in team, and I think that's the case with West Ham.
Talking soccer with Nigel Seeley. Follow him on Twitter at Seeley_Nigel. How about a pick for the Champions League?
I'm going to throw one out there at a big price. I have been very, very, very impressed this season with Seville in Spain. I'm over in Spain now, in the south of Spain, not far from Seville. The weather's absolutely terrible, by the way. It's windy, horrible. It's a nightmare. But Seville are 3rd in La Liga, playing exceptionally well. Great goal scoring threat. I think they scored 22 goals in their last 5 home games. One of the games they won 9-0. A fantastic coach. A very, very good side to watch on the eye. They play Leicester in the last 16. I think that's a penalty kick. I think they're through to the quarterfinals. I think the draw should say Seville, next one, bye. It's a bye through to the quarterfinals. I think Seville are very, very, very underrated by the bookies. Everyone looks at the big 2 sides. Barcelona, obviously, in big, big trouble. Real Madrid, I don't think, are the team they were. No team has ever successfully defended the Champions League in its new style, so that's a big negative. Bayern Munich, I still don't know they beat Arsenal. I'm not convinced by them. But Seville, they've won the Europa League the last 2 years. They know how to play European football. They're very, very hard to beat at home. And I think at decent odds, Seville to win the Champions League.
Hey, excellent job. Great to talk soccer with you. Let's do it again soon, Nigel.
No problem, Paul. The best, mate.
And that's Nigel Seeley. I like soccer content because Lord knows I can't deliver it, Pauly. I'm glad you found someone that can. Play of the daytime. Where are we going to go today?
Yep, thanks to Deb and the crew for setting that up. Good to talk soccer here. Ian Cameron tomorrow, NHL. So in honor of Nigel, let's go soccer. Champions League today, 11:45 a.m. Pacific. Monaco against Man City, Manchester Stadium, betting number 224221 and 24222, over 2.5 goals, -155, round of 16 Champions League. Let's go over the total and make it 5 in a row with the SportsBIT play of the day. As I mentioned, Ian Cameron tomorrow to talk NHL. A lot of teams have changed coaches. A lot of moves have worked out. Who's hot, who's not, who to go against. We'll talk hockey with Ian, and a busy show coming up the rest of the week with some great college basketball games in Louisville, North Carolina. Great schedule the rest of the week. Thanks for watching here on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.